and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey. So if you're a regular on my channel, one thing you've probably heard me say several times is how polish is what separates good games from great games. It is an absolutely crucial part of the game making process. You should definitely spend some time polishing your games, definitely make sure you don't neglect that. And polish is also a skill you can actually learn. And if you do want to learn that skill, there's a really awesome exercise that I think you should do. I first wrote about this in my Game Dev Report newsletter. This is what I write every single month with any interesting news and game dev articles that I come across each week. It's a great way to stay up to date and learn some stuff. Check the link in the description to sign up for free. So in one of the newsletters, I wrote about this. Why is this so satisfying? So over here, look at this GIF. I think it looks really awesome, simple in terms of game design, but feels like it would be very satisfying to play. Here it is, and yep, it does look absolutely satisfying. There's lots of flashes, lots of explosions, really excellent colors, so the whole thing feels really awesome. Despite being actually relatively simple in terms of game design, it is really just a car just moving around and trying to dodge other cars. So in terms of game design, it actually feels somewhat simple, but because it has so much polish, because it has so many really cool effects, because just that simple action feels quite satisfying. And here what I mentioned is one fun exercise you can always do is look at games that look super polished, like this one, and spend some time analyzing why it looks so awesome. So try to identify all the tiny little details that make it look and feel so satisfying. This is absolutely one exercise that I highly recommend you do. Like I said, polish is a skill. It is a very valuable skill, and it is a skill that you can learn. In order to learn, you really just need to do an exercise just like this. Anytime you find some kind of game, or even just a short GIF that looks really satisfying, anytime you do that, take some time to analyze why does it look so satisfying. In this example, we can see we have a bunch of things. We can see there's, for example, just some simple screen shake when a car explodes. So as soon as it touches the car, there's a slight screen shake. That is always one of the easiest ways to add some polish to your game. Adding some kind of shake can make pretty much any action feel quite a bit more impactful. Even if the shake is quite subtle, subconsciously, your brain will notice that things shake a little bit, so it feels much more impactful. Then a super important one is how the explosion particle effect, that one is actually made up of multiple effects. So there's the explosion, so the main explosion that blows up. Then there's also a really nice circle on the floor, yep, that one. And then there's also the meteors, these kind of flying things that fly forward along with momentum. If it was just a single explosion, just one single particle effect, it would definitely not feel this impactful, definitely not feel this satisfying. So even if you do take time to add polish, make sure you, let's say, polish the actual polish. So don't just add a simple explosion, but try to see what else can you add. For example, here, I am sure this would not be not even 1/10 as satisfying if it didn't have, for example, those little meteors going forward. That one really sells the sense of speed, the sense of momentum for the car going forward. Without that, things would definitely not be as satisfying if it just had just a normal explosion, just shows up and nothing else. Then of course there are some smoke puffs that come out of the explosion and as the destroyed cars hit the ground. So as the cars fly around, once they hit the ground again, they get some smoke puffs. So once again, if it just had the explosion, it would not feel as satisfying. So it's that combination of multiple explosions plus some smoke puffs, add them all together and it looks really satisfying. Then there are some concrete barricades at the top and bottom of the level that really help sell the sense of speed. So this is a driving game, so in pretty much any kind of driving game, you always want to sell the sense of speed. And in this case, since all the cars are all moving in one direction, if it was just cars, then you wouldn't really get a sense of speed because everything is moving along the same axis. So if everything is moving along, then it doesn't really feel like it's moving quite fast. So by adding these little concrete barricades at the top, those that have some very clear delineations, because that you can definitely see they are moving quite fast, so it really helps sell the sense of speed. Then of course you've got some speed trails behind the player's cars. So there's a player up there and one down there. So add those two and look at that, it really makes it feel like this car is moving quite a bit faster than the other cars, even though in reality they're all mostly moving at roughly the same speed. But by adding those little speed lines, those are definitely a classic in pretty much any kind of car game. Then the bloom effect, of course, to make the explosions glow bright. If you remove bloom, then this would definitely not feel as satisfying, not as impactful. Bloom is definitely one of the best effects you can add to your game. Pretty much any game can really benefit from bloom. Obviously, make sure you don't overdo it. At the extreme end, you've got something like Oblivion, which everything is way too bloom, way too glowy. It gets to a point where even some characters, you can barely see them. So don't take it too far, but bloom is pretty much always an excellent effect, even if it is a little bit subtle. Then the cars glow red hot when exploding. So yep, as soon as you touch the cars, they become red. Once again, if it did not do that, if they remain gray pretty much all the time, if they did that, then it wouldn't feel as impactful when you hit a car. So making them turn red hot, that really helps sell the sense of the explosion. Touching the cars, everything blows up, everything looks really nice. And of course, quite simply, great color design. So the red really pops out compared to all the gray cars. So in this case, pretty much all the NPC cars, those are all gray. The background, that's all just gray and black. But then the players, those are all red. And then the explosions are some really nice bright orange. So put them all together and it really helps those colors pop out. It really helps the player's actions be quite a bit more impactful. So if you took all of these away, then this exact same game would feel much more boring to play. This is why I say that polish is what separates a good game from a great game, because if you take a game that is really great, if you do that and you take away all the polish, then you see that underneath it all, it is really just a normal game. Meaning that if you are making your own games and you think your game just looks normal and nothing special, if so, then that's probably fine. That is probably because you haven't yet taken the time to go through all these steps. I mean, look at this. We've got, what is this, like 7 different steps? 7 different things that make this simple action, this like 5-second clip, make this feel much more impactful. Take all these away and this exact same game, exact same gameplay, everything exactly the same, would feel much, much worse. So that is why I say definitely make sure you take some time to polish your game. That is what is going to take your game from looking normal to taking it to the next level. And yep, this is by the same developer that made Instruments of Destruction. That is another excellently polished game. So here it is, and yep, that's another one that is really satisfying to play. So look at that, we've got the nice little tilt shift effect, so everything looks really cool. You've got obviously tons of particles, tons of explosions. So you've got all the pieces flying around, then of course you've got some smoke, then you've got some more particle effects, you've got bloom, you've got explosions, you've got tons of pieces flying around. Again, the whole thing would feel much less satisfying if instead of all this, you just touch a building and the building just disappears. So like I wrote here, I always say how polish is what separates good games from great games, and polish is absolutely a skill you can learn. Since it's such a valuable skill, I highly recommend you learn about it, and one way to learn is to do exactly this exercise that I mentioned. So yep, what we just did here, looking at a simple GIF that looks very satisfying, and basically analyzing why it looks so awesome, making this fun exercise is something I highly recommend you do if you want to improve your own polish skills. So anytime you come across a really cool GIF, like for example this game here called Meat Shot, look at it, and if it looks super cool, try to analyze why does it look super cool. So in this case, you've got lots of trails as the player is moving around. You've got the camera very active, very moving around, so the whole thing really sells the power fantasy. You've got all those trails as the character is moving super fast. You've got the trails at the actual feet. Then you've got all these animations that make all of those flips look really cool. If it was just a normal climb up animation, obviously it wouldn't look as cool. You've got a really slight slow motion effect, so not as intense as something like Max Payne, but really helps make it feel quite impactful. Then you've got a little freeze frame as soon as the character dies. So over there, as he goes, as he shoots that character, yep, there you go, it freezes for a little bit. This is something that a lot of fighting games usually do. Anytime you punch the opponent, there's a little freeze frame that, once again, helps really sell the impactful of the action. Or another game like this one, Deliver at All Costs. Once again, this one also feels super satisfying, super cool. There's a lot of destruction, so all pieces moving around, so it's not really just the car driving around, but the car hitting things and everything blows over. The way that the car has physics, the way that it moves and actually bounces around, that makes it feel quite a bit more satisfying as if it was pretty much just a solid block. Once again, using physics on the character over there. Pretty much adding physics is always one of the easiest ways to add polish to pretty much anything. Then once again, all destruction, all of those effects. The world feels very alive, so there are particles, there are people, there's pretty much action all over the place. And of course, there's tons and tons of post-processing effects on top of everything. So you've got some bloom, you've got some really nice colors. Without all of this, it would really just be a simple car driving minigame. So yep, I highly recommend you do this exercise. Anytime you find something that you yourself find that it feels really satisfying, if so, take some time to try to analyze why it looks, why it feels so awesome. Try to identify all those tiny little details. And if you do, then when you're working on your own games and you're trying to make your own games much more satisfying, if so, then you will know all the tiny things you can do, all the tiny things you can add to make your game feel really awesome. So yep, sign up for my weekly newsletter to learn about more awesome articles kind of like this one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.